Hey guys,
Hey, Chris.
we having fun?
Meow meow. Are we
Hang on,
on?
we're not on yet.
Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to Vikings Report Rewind. I'm your humble host, Ted Glover. How's everybody doing tonight? Drewster, how are you?
Oh, Ted Glover, how's your post draft days going along there, brother?
I'm hanging in there, man.
Good. So am I.
Chris, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Are you in a hospital room with that room divider there, or what?
No.
What the heck is that over on the thing there?
No, it is actually a suite. I'll move my camera off to the side there, and you
Oh,
can see it's a divider because that couch pulls out into a bed if there was like 20 people in this room, but it's just me, so I just have a bunch of extra room and like a shower curtain in the middle of it.
I
Cool.
thought the draft might have hit you harder than anyone expected. Happy to be here with you guys again. This is going to be a lot of fun, just like draft weekend was a lot of fun. So
That was a lot of fun, man.
I think Malik Willis is still available if the Vikings want to grab him here.
Is
What
Jacoby
about-
Dean still on the board?
He might be.
Is
Who
Ed
else is there trade
Marinero
up
still
there?
at the podium? Good old Eddie Marinero.
All right.
Good
I'm your
Lord.
humble host, Doug Glover. Of course, as you know, with me is Drew and Chris. Behind the scenes, making all this work is Ruby. So we got a lot of talk. We've got a lot to talk about. The Vikings draft, as you all know, happened this past weekend. The Vikings draft class overall has received generally pretty positive reviews. But not only the players, but I would argue the trades that new GM Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah made on his first endeavor as Vikings GM were the things that had everybody talking. The very first one happened round one. Vikings were on the clock at 12, and then we find they're at 32, and lo and behold, Detroit had the 32nd pick, not because they won the Super Bowl. Let's not get all carried away about the Lions. But the Vikings ended up trading 12 and 46 to Detroit for 32, 34, and 66. So none of us really liked the trade at the time. Has it grown on you at all, Drew? Or are you still not a fan of how that trade went down?
You're never going to be able to talk me into the compensation we received as being. We went through that on the live show. I think you need to make a team overpay to move up 32 to 12. It's not like you're moving up from the 5th round to the 4th. I mean, you're moving up to the 12th overall pick. I don't think the Vikings gouged him quite enough, and I don't know how the numbers on the charts pan out, but I don't care about the numbers on the charts. I think there has to be some kind of convenience charge thrown in there. So I would have liked to have either kept 46 or gotten a 1st or 2nd round pick next season. Then I would have been pretty much okay with it. But in terms of the play, now that's just the trade and the compensation. In terms of the players, I mean, I throw the simple question back to you and Christopher Gates. You got door number 1 or door number 2? Door number 1 has Kyle Hamilton. Door number 2 has Lewis Seen and Andrew Booth. Which door are you picking?
Chris?
I mean, when you put it like you said, at the time, we didn't like the trade. We thought that the Vikings should have gotten more compensation, whether that would have come in the form of keeping the 2nd round pick or, getting something in next year's draft. But I mean, when Drew puts it that way, what the Vikings did with the picks they wound up getting makes the trade a little more palatable, because I'm not sure how big the drop off from Kyle Hamilton to Lewis Seen is. And then the Vikings were able to parlay the picks from that deal into being able to trade up and get Andrew Booth. And they wound up with Ed Ingram later in the 2nd round as well. And then Brian Asamoah. So, I mean, the way Kwesi manipulated the draft after the first trade, I think makes the rest of the original trade a little little easier to swallow, I think.
Yeah, that's what she said. Secondly, but that was the first in a series of moves that Chris hinted at. So the Vikings got 32, 34, and 66. And then in the 2nd round, and like you said, at 32, they picked Lewis Seen. When the Vikings came on the clock at 34, They traded down with Green Bay, who got pick 34. The Vikings got picks 53 and 59. They used pick 53 as part of a package to move back up to the 42nd spot in a trade with Indianapolis and picked Andrew Booth Jr. And then with pick 66, the original trade, they got Brian Asamoah. Pick 59, they got Ed Ingram. So out of that initial trade, the Vikings got 3 really good players, I would argue.
They did. I mean, 3 potential starters if you think that that Ingram's going to immediately challenge for the starting spot at right guard. I don't know if Asamoah is going to be someone that immediately challenges for starting time. He should be a core special teamer at the very least, I would think, early on. But yeah, with Seen and Booth and Ingram, you probably got 3 day one starters right off the bat. And we talked about the Ed Ingram thing quite a bit after the pick happened and that sort of thing. But, you know, football alone, football wise, separating it from the off field stuff, it seems like the Vikings got at least 3 pretty solid starters right away from all the deals that were made.
Drew, I mean, when you put it all together, all those trades together, you sort of hinted at it. You know, you got door number 1 or door number 2. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, Monty Hall made a lot of deals. Are you okay with how everything ended up once the smoke cleared and the dust settled?
You know what, guys? When we led up to the show, Ted Glover, and we did a lot of episodes, studio talk about what we wanted to do in round 1. And I always stuck to my guns and said, if the Vikings trade back from 12 and still get a quality corner, which is top 3, if they trade back, get a quality corner, and they go defensive in the top heavy part of the draft, they go all defensive guys, I'm not going to complain. That's exactly what happened. So I don't have any complaints about the first 2 days. I mean, I'd rather come out of there with Lewis Seen, who's going to end up being a better safety than Kyle Hamilton. Go ahead and send me all your mail you want. He's better. He's going to be better in the long run.
Really? You think so?
I do. Lewis Seen and Andrew Booth. And like Chris just mentioned, 3 starters, possibly if you can get 3 to 4 starters out of your draft, it's a success right off the bat. That's what you're not going to really get more than that. That's a great draft, getting 4 starters. Right now there's 3, I think we got out of that with the 3 that Chris just mentioned, but 5 out of the first 6 picks were defense. Let's face it, last year we lost a bunch of games because of the defense. Wasn't Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins wasn't the Antichrist throwing losses up. I mean, he can play better and he can play better under pressure, but this team's problem was the defense. 30th ranked defense. We lost games because of the defense. The defense had to get better. And 5 out of the first picks were defensive picks. Right off the bat, 2 starters for the secondary that I think are both going to start. You know, I think we're going to have a lot of 3 safety packages, but they gave me exactly what I wanted out of the draft, Ted. The 2 things I mentioned, trade back, still get a quality corner, and they ended up picking up a great safety. And I can't complain about it. I can't.
When it's all said and done, you got, and we'll just go over the rest of the class. They got Seen, Booth, and Ingram, Asamoah, Evans, because Azazi Otomoeo, Vidarian Love, Jalen Miller, and Nick Muse is the entire Vikings draft class. When you look at the guys that they drafted for this defense, you have to be fairly happy with how it all went, because they got a lot faster, they got a lot younger, and I think they put talent at positions that the Vikings desperately needed talent at.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. And like you said, they needed speed on defense at pretty much every level, and they got that. They didn't really address the edge until later on with Otemwo, and he's more of a developmental guy, but he's got some decent potential. And I mean, even the offensive guys they drafted add quite a bit to this class, I think. So I think the Vikings wound up doing a pretty solid job overall, even after the initial stumble on the first trade, which I think we all agree that it was a stumble, but we made up for it later on in the draft.
Another thing people were really irritated with was that they were making trades with division rivals, Detroit, and then a lot of people seemed particularly upset with the Detroit trade because Like you, Drew, I don't think they got enough compensation in that draft, in that trade. I'm not going to be happy with that trade in 10 years. But again, when you take it all in together, I'm okay with how it all went down. So I don't think it was that they traded with Detroit. It was people think they got fleeced by Detroit, but people were genuinely irritated that the Vikings traded with Green Bay. And I thought they got the better end of that deal, personally. Do you agree or not, Drew?
I think they did get the better end of that deal. I would have liked to. We'll talk a little bit, maybe about what I really wanted to go after a center. There's a couple centers that I had my eye on that, I really wanted to grab. Cam Jurgens was one of them. We can talk about that if we want or not. But I think we did get the better end of that deal. I really do. There's word out there that Tampa Bay was really wanted Lewis Cine really bad. But they just took Winfield. I don't know if they really wanted to say. I don't care who we trade with. Look at Jamison Williams doesn't want to be in Detroit. Look at his face. He doesn't want to.
I was going to say, did you see that picture of him at his introductory press conference?
He doesn't want to be there. It's the same face Treadwell had when he was on stage for us. Same face.
It looked like a hostage picture for crying.
And instead of
Jameson, blink twice if you need to be rescued.
Let's face it. They got Goff, guys. They're not going anywhere. They got Goff.
No.
So I don't. I mean, sure, you'd like to trade with another team, Ted, but I'm not gonna. People are going to the nth degree about how it's so wrong. I mean, you're talking about the players, not the team. It's deal. The deal. Isn't the deal the important part?
And let's talk about the other side of those trades. For the Lions, they picked up Jamison Williams in the first round, and that kid from Kentucky, the defensive lineman from Kentucky with the
Pascal.
Josh Pascal from at 46. And then the Packers, with that second round trade, they moved up and picked wide receiver Christian Watson. And that was like something everybody focused on, was the fact that, well, not only did they trade with division rivals, but those division rivals ended up getting two very good wide receivers. And nobody seems to want to talk about the fact that the Vikings drafted two defensive backs that I think match up very well with the two receivers that Detroit and Green Bay drafted. But maybe that's just me being a homer, Chris.
No, I think a lot of people's irritation, like you said, not wanting to necessarily trade with a division rival. But I mean, if you take the teams out of it, you take the jerseys out of it, and you say, okay, this team is going to offer you 2 second-round picks for 1 second-round pick, and the talent disparity from 34 to wherever we picked in the second round, I think it was 50. We wound up picking at 42 again after the trade up.
Yeah.
The discrepancy between 34 and 42 is not that great as far as talent is concerned. So that if you want to look at it from that perspective, the Vikings or the Packers thought so little of what the Vikings were trying to do that they gave them the opportunity to draft 2 players rather than drafting 1 at 34, whereas the Packers could have kept their 2 picks and drafted 2 players and just let the Vikings have 1. So it's hard to think that the Vikings didn't get the better end of that deal because, it's not like they got 2 fourth-round picks for that second-round pick. I mean, they moved down a few spots in the second round and picked 2 guys that were still in the top 60 picks. So that's a solid win, I think, for the Vikings if you just take the emotion of the division rival thing out of it.
Go ahead, Drew.
Also, I want to throw this little tidbit in there that personally, I think it takes longer for the wide receivers to adapt to the offense than it does for the defensive backs to adapt to the defense. So I think right out of the gate, start of the season, week 1 in September, I think the Vikings are going to have a little bit of an advantage wherever the teams may fall on the schedule. It's not that easy to work wide receivers into. I mean, you don't get a Justin Jefferson every day that just has amazing. It walks right in and they're like ready to go. So I think there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period for both Watson and Williams. But everything you guys said is spot on and accurate.
Well, and Adolfo Mensa was not done trading because in the 4th round, he traded pick 156 and a 2023 4th rounder to Cleveland for pick 118. And at pick 118, he picked cornerback Caleb Evans, a corner out of Mizzou. And after the draft, he said that was a guy and was kind of a
What?
funny quote. We made fun of. He said, "If that's the guy," he sat. I sat in a dark room and watched a lot of film over, and I kind of thought to myself, "Well, let's not talk about your personal life. It's your business. I don't care." But then he said it was his cornerback because I really liked his game. So I think the Vikings got two potential players in Booth and Evans in the secondary that's going to really help out a Vikings defense that we all said sorely needs it.
Absolutely.
That is draft defensive guys, the first 4 or 5 picks or whatever. Trade back. And my third thing was double up. If you're going to double up on any position, double up on corner. And that's what they did.
Yeah. For the first 5. Oh, go ahead, Drew. Sorry.
No, I'm glad they doubled. That was the only position. They covered just about every position on their team except for center and quarterback and maybe defensive tackle. So they covered like 9 positions off the Drew big board. And the one position I think we had to get 2 of was corner. And that's exactly what they did. So, and I was happy with Evans. I hear people say, Evans, there was a better, that McCollum guy was on the board. There's better corners on the board. You know what? Just because you're bored, they might have thought Evans is a better player. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Don't go overboard and being angry. Maybe the Vikings, there's parts of Akil Evans' game they like better than other guys.
And it could be the way they want their corners to play in the scheme that Ed Donatell's gonna field for the Vikings. I'm willing to give it a chance, man. I mean, 4 of the first 5 guys the Vikings drafted were on defense. In Cena safety, Booth and Evans corners, and then Brian Asamoah linebacker, who we really haven't talked a whole lot about yet. Out of all those guys, I mean, everybody talks about the first round pick and all that. You really make your money in terms of having a strong roster 2 and 3 years down the road.
That's
by
right.
who you pick in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round. And Brian Asamoah is a dude I love. I just love the way he plays football.
Meow, meow. Oh, we talked about him on Vikings Report repeatedly, Ted.
Yeah.
What do you think of him, Chris?
I think he's the kind of guy, I don't want to christen him as the next Anthony Barr or anything like that, but I think he's going to kind of fill the Barr spot in the Vikings defense. He's going to be that fast guy that can chase down screens and blow up screens. And, like you guys said during the draft, he always seems to be around the football, which is definitely something you want out of your linebackers. And if this team's going to go to more of a 3-4 kind of look, he seems like the kind of guy that can be kind of a star in that outside role in the 3-4 type of look. So that was a really solid pick, I thought.
So, and then the later round picks, the kid from Minnesota, how do you pronounce his name?
I believe it's Atumwo.
Atumwo, Tyler Chandler, Vidarian Lowe, Jalen Naylor, and Nick Muse. I mean, so let's take this whole class sort of in total and give me your, because we haven't, we weren't on for day 3 for the 4th round and on. So how did you think Drew, the Vikings did on day 3 of the draft in rounds 4 through 7?
First off, I want to throw the word out to the viewers that we are going to be covering all these guys the next few months on Vikings Report. We're going to be taking one draft pick every studio show and completely breaking them down. You'll know everything about them. You'll know everything you need to know about them. So I want people to think we're not going to, they're going to actually break down individual players. We're not doing it tonight. This is more like a cram everything together for a show, but I wanted everybody to know that we are going to break them down over the course of the next 2 months. I was happy. I mean, defensive the first half, they obviously went offensive the second half. I would have liked when we had that pick at 59 when we took Ed Ingram. I was hoping we could use that and maybe a later pick or maybe even a pick from next year and somehow move up to get Juergens, who went 51 to the Eagles. Juergens you get Cam Juergens in this draft, we're looking A+. I mean, that would have just made my whole day to get a center of that caliber. And I thought, Ingram's going to be a starter, he's going to be a good player, but I'd rather have the value at center than I would at guard. I mean, if you ask me, and I think we're still hurting at center. I would like to have moved up and somehow gotten a deal done for Cam Juergens, but they didn't. The second half of the draft, I'm really, really excited about the wide receiver from Michigan State.
Jalen Naylor?
Jalen Naylor. I'm really excited about him. Watched him in the Big Ten quite a bit, and I heard a lot of good things from other fans about Vidarian Lowe and Ty Chandler as a running back, change of pace running back. The only thing I didn't like, Ted, and as we were watching, I remember talking to you on on Saturday. There seemed like a really big gap between 118 and 165.
Yeah.
It seemed like I was waiting like 3 hours for it. Seemed like way too long to make a draft pick.
Well, if you were a Ravens fan, I mean, they had 12 picks in that time. So I think,
No, everybody wants picks at the beginning of the draft. You can't do that. It's impossible. Or you take a bunch of picks at the end of the draft. And if you take a bunch of 7 rounders, you're just a dipshit. That's an idiot way to draft. You're an idiot if you do that. Whoever does that takes a bunch of
Who the heck does that?
Maybe I think the Ravens have stumbled onto something. In the 4th round, compile all your picks because you still have blue chippers and you don't have the later end guys who aren't considered. You're right in the middle of it. So let's put all of our picks at 6 picks in the 4th round. That might be the new standard. That might be something that other people copy because you'd rather do that than to have would you rather have 6 4th rounders or 6 7th rounders? I think they were onto something. Now they took 12 tight ends, but
Chris, what are your thoughts on the guys they drafted on Saturday?
I liked a lot of the guys who took on Saturday. I think Ty Chandler is a sneaky good pick because if you look at the Vikings depth chart at running back, this is Alexander Madison's last year of his rookie contract, and Dalvin Cook's cap number in 2023 is something like $14 million. I don't think the Vikings are paying Dalvin Cook $14 million in 2023. So
yeah,
a guy like Tyson, or I keep calling him Tyson Chandler. It's just Ty, I think. But yeah, he was a solid pick. I thought I like the Naylor pick. Like Drew said, if you can't find his highlights of the game Michigan State had against Rutgers this last year, yeah, I know Rutgers and blah blah, but the guy had 3 touchdown catches first half that each covered at least 60 yards. So
he averaged 44.2 yards a catch in that game.
That's ridiculous.
5 catches, 225 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
the thing about Naylor was though he was injured a lot, and so it's rare that a guy comes to the National Football League and gets more healthy every year. So that's something he's going to have to overcome. But I thought day 3 was pretty solid overall for the Vikings. I mean, they stopped trading in about the 4th round and just made the rest of their picks. I would have liked to have maybe seen them take a tight end a little bit earlier, given what the roster looks like at tight end. But no, I can't argue a lot of what they did.
Who's your favorite player that they picked on Saturday, Chris? Is it Chandler or Naylor or somebody else?
I actually like the Caleb Evans pick a lot. I mean, he's the kind of corner that teams kind of want to get their hands on. He's a bigger guy. I think he's like 6'2", 205. And, if you want to get those bigger corners to keep up with a lot of the bigger receivers that we see in the NFL, I believe Evans played his first 4 years at Tulsa before he transferred to Missouri. So he stepped up a little bit in competition in his last year. But I think that's the kind of guy that teams want to try to develop at corner. And that's the kind of guy you take in the 4th round, of the guys with the athletic traits that you can coach up and hopefully they become something later on down the line. So that was probably my favorite pick of day 3, I think.
Drew, you can't pick a Caleb Evans because Chris did. So of the remaining dudes, pick your favorite pick your favorte Saturday draft pick.
Come on. I'm a Big Ten guy, Ted. It's got to be Naylor or Vidarian Lowe, the big cat out of Illinois. Two Big Ten guys. I think Vidarian Lowe is going to be, we need a good swing guy, backup. He makes me feel a lot better about the offensive line getting that guy in. That guy can play. So it'll be one of those 2 guys. I think Naylor's going to get a run at the 3rd wide receiver spot, Ted.
Yeah, I was gonna say real quick about Vidarian Lowe. We were on Vikings Uncensored on was it Monday?
I can't remember.
With Ryan and New Brunswick.
That was a fun show. We had fun.
And when we got to Vidarian Lowe, we talked about him being kind of a Rashad Hill role or maybe even a comp. And I kind of joked about it at first, but I'll tell you what, if they could get a guy like Vidarian Lowe in the 5th round to become a career backup or guy that you can sub in for 3 or 4 games, there's nothing wrong with that pick right there at all. That's a solid. And again, it goes to those roster depth that the Vikings have been so sorely lacking for the last 2, 3, or 4 years. If Lowe can come in and do that Rashad Hill job, then that'll end up being a great pick for the Vikings.
Quality depth is how you win in this league. Because starters go down, starters get hurt. If you don't have any depth, you don't have a shot.
No, my favorite pick would be Tyler Chandler, simply for the fact I think of all these guys, except with maybe Naylor, Chandler may see the field sooner than everybody else. Chris talked about the running back situation, and there's a very good chance come 2023 that your running back depth chart may be Kene Nwangwu and Ty Chandler. Just sort of, it really is going to depend on the Dalvin Cook contract situation and how that gets resolved, if it gets resolved. I don't know that Alexander Madison will be back as a free agent. I think he'll probably want to go somewhere and try and be a more of a feature guy. This is just pure speculation on my part. So that the Vikings might get priced out of bringing a guy like him back. I'd be fine with him coming back at the right price, but the running back situation is going to be one to look at the next offseason. But for right now, I think it's pretty solid. Jalen Naylor is a guy. Wide receiver coach Keenan McCardell was apparently pounding the table for the Vikings to draft him in the 6th round. And I tell you what, I also said this on the VU show on Monday. If a guy like Keenan McCardell is one of the 2 or 3 dudes I wanted the Vikings to retain on the coaching staff when Kevin O'Connell got hired, and fortunately he was. And if a guy like Keenan McCardell says, I want this kid,
right,
that tells me a lot about what he thinks he can do from a coaching perspective to turn him into a NFL football player. Drew, are you on board with this, or do you think we're just putting too much into these late round guys?
No, you have to. If McCardell wants somebody, that you defer to him. It's nice to have positional coaches who just aren't there to get a paycheck, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, it is.
If he's pounding the table for a wide out, you put the card in. Hell, you're at what, 191? You put the card in, 191. Yeah. So yeah. I'm excited to watch all these. I think they had a great draft. Positionally, I'm really happy with how they did the positions. The only flaw I see in the whole draft is the compensation from the Lions. I would have liked to have gotten one more pick back.
Chris, pretty much the same thoughts. You got anything else you want to add to the overall class perspective?
I pretty much agree with Drew. The Vikings addressed the positions they needed to address. They doubled up on corners, and they need bodies at corner basically with Patrick Peterson coming back for one more year and a whole lot of youth and inconsistency behind him. They addressed the positions they needed to address, and I really don't have any issues with anything the Vikings did. But like Drew said, they didn't get enough for that first trade. We've beaten that horse into glue pretty much. But I think overall it was a really solid draft.
Go ahead, Drew.
There's something I wanted to go over when we're all kind of tying things up here. There's a question I want to ask you guys, something I was working on today called the Great 8, and I'd just like to have a couple minutes to go over it.
Okay. Now, Drew, one thing you had mentioned earlier is you wish the Vikings had moved up and traded for a center or drafted a center. They didn't. And at the end of the draft, that one of the undrafted free agents they got was a center out of Sacred Heart. And we'll come back to the undrafted free agents in a minute. But Garrett Bradbury still seems to be the big, huge question mark on the Minnesota Vikings offensive line. And earlier today, Darren Doogie Wolfson of local Twin Cities media, Vikings guy, said on Twitter on one of the shows, maybe with Paul Allen or Score North, I can't remember where he was on. But he said free agent signee Chris Reed from Indianapolis, a guy the Vikings brought in this year, is going to compete with Garrett Bradbury for that center position. Now he may have played center in college, but he's not played center in the NFL. Do you think this is a good move, Chris, or do you think the Vikings are just throwing stuff up against the wall and see what sticks?
You have to have some kind of competition for Bradbury at this point. They didn't bother to pick up his 5th-year option, which I think everyone saw coming. The 5th-year option on Bradbury would have been north of $13 million, and there was no way that dude was getting that money. So you have to have somebody to compete with Bradbury at this point. I know that Kevin O'Connell has said that the only spot on the offensive line that's up for grabs is right guard, but you can't just declare that you're going to go into the season with Garrett Bradbury without at least trying to push him a little bit. And like I said, I don't know if Reed, like you said, I don't think Reed has played center in the NFL, but yeah, they've got to do something, whether it's the undrafted guy that you talked about or trying to push someone over, or, I know it's kind of a running joke, but they were giving Wyatt Davis snaps at center last preseason, at least at practices and whatnot. So that might be something they're looking at, but you got to do something to push Garrett Bradbury a little bit.
Brewster, you got a football mind with over 50 years of experience. What
the? Wait, what was that voice with this? Was that a tsunami alert? What the hell was that?
That was
take the next left and head to the dinner tent.
That was the autopilot on the submarine. That was my.
Oh, okay.
It sounded like a warning voice. Prepare to die. Or something. I want to mention something. This on Bradbury. We missed on Juergens, and I knew it was kind of a tough spot to move up to 51. I knew he was getting ready to go, and I knew the Eagles were going to take him because Kelsey, who plays for the Eagles, said the best center in the draft is Cam Juergens. And they went off his, talk about taking somebody's word for it. Yeah. Kelsey said, he's me. So I knew he wasn't going to be around. They would have traded to get him. When they got to 165 and took Odomiwo, the defensive end, there was a guy on the board named Luke Wattenberg, a center that I love. I did a lot of research on him. I had him on my Drew Big Board. I think he's going to be a really terrific center in this league. And I was hoping at 165 they would take him. They didn't. And then they had another pick. 4 picks later, they got to 169. And I'm thinking, that's would be a great time to grab Wattenberg right here. They took Ty Chandler. I'm not unhappy with that pick. But I sat there and I went, damn it. I really would have liked to have a center. 2 picks later, who do the Broncos take?
I don't know who they take.
Luke Wattenberg.
Oh.
2 picks after I wanted him. So there's a couple
Wattenberger.
There was 2 chances to grab a center. And I only bring all this up because, we look at the draft, there's always guys you wanted, didn't get. But
yeah,
if center ends up being a problem, I'm going to look back in this draft and say, I had a couple kind of chances to try to grab somebody back then. But not to say Wattenberg was going to be a starter, but still we had a chance to get a guy and maybe turn him into a starter. I think this Bradbury thing seems, I don't know what's going on with it. You're bringing in a guy to compete with him who doesn't have a lot of center experience. The guy doesn't have any snaps at center other than preseason. I mean,
so you think it would have been better to bring in a guy in the later rounds to maybe push Bradbury to start, or as opposed to a guy that's played the NFL and he's played well? I just hasn't been at center.
I think Chris Reed's a better offensive lineman than Wattenberg, but he may not be a better center. They're moving him in there to try him at center. They're trying him at center. There's a big difference of him just being a center or trying him at center. And I thought Wattenberg was a pretty good value right there at 169. I wish they would have took him, but they didn't. So, yeah, you got to have some competition. The center thing still is a concern to me, guys.
Yeah, I it's less than optimal for me. It just feels, and people that did not like this draft and did not like this free agency period say, why did the Vikings even bother firing Rick Spielman? Because this had a very Rick Spielman-ish feel to it. First of all, do you agree? Drew, you're shaking your head. Do you even don't even agree with that?
No.
And why not?
I mean, you could look at a couple of the trade backs and call it that, but look at the positions. Look at the attitude of players they got. Asamoah, Booth, Scene, they're all aggressive, hard-nosed football players who hit you.
Yeah.
They went after a certain style of football player. They didn't just fly by their seat of their pants. Just take this guy like Spielman. No. I don't compare it at all like a Rick Spielman draft. I don't.
It seemed to be a lot more focused on pure athleticism. Somebody mentioned in the comments just a minute ago the amount of speed the Vikings got, especially with those first 4 defensive backs or defensive picks. Asamoah, Scene, and Booth are all fast dudes. They're all hitters. They're all football players. I mean, it's it's going to be fun to watch these guys get integrated into this Vikings defense and see what type of energy they bring. And a guy like Scene knows how to win at a very high level, which God knows this team needs to develop.
Ted, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah took Brian Asamoah at 4th round pick.
Yeah, 3rd round pick.
3rd round pick. 4th round pick.
4th round pick was Caleb Evans.
Rick Spielman took Willie Beavers. I have nothing left to say. Who would you rather have?
There you go. Chris?
No, I don't think. I know people, people are angry about the Detroit trade and the couple of trade backs or whatever, and they want to throw Adolfo-Mensah and Spielman in the same boat. We saw the same thing from Rick Spielman for like 12 years or something like that. This was Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's first draft as the general manager. And,
Right.
Something that I've seen people mention that I don't know can be overlooked. Adolfo-Mensah went into this draft with the scouting staff and everyone else that he inherited from the previous regime. I wouldn't be surprised that over the next coming days and weeks or whatever, you see a lot of people get moved out so that people who are more in line with what Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah wants to do as far as roster construction is concerned. But like every coach wants to have their guys. I think the GM, like Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, is going to want to have his guys here too. And right after the draft is a time where you see a lot of scouts and scouting departments get changed out when you see teams come in, because you can't fire your scouting department 2 months before the draft. That's bad. You can't do that.
That's very true.
The week after the draft, you can sure as hell start changing people out. And I think that's I think we're probably going to see that. So I can give Kwesi a bit of a pass on that. I mean, the one bad move notwithstanding, but I think next year is when we're going to really start seeing his vision for this football team.
It's really well said.
Yeah,
really
that's a great point. And they could very well be waiting to do that, to move on Bradbury and just kind of go with a stopgap option this year, because the whole reason we brought up Garrett Bradbury is because the Vikings declined his 5th-year option. So this will be his last year. I mean, if they're going to decline his 5th-year option, that almost certainly guarantees they're not going to look to extend him. So yeah, maybe they're working something like that, and just they'll try and figure it out next year. I don't know.
Have you guys heard anything out of camp, Ted, about Bradbury? About do they like him? Do they think he's good?
Yeah, well, Kevin O'Connell has said he likes what Garrett Bradbury brings to the table, and they think that with some new coaching and maybe teach him some new techniques, he'll be able to improve. And I said this on our show earlier, a few episodes back. I mean, I don't care what technique you teach a guy, if you're constantly outweighed by 30 or 40 pounds and just don't have the upper body strength, there's no technique in the world that is going to be able to keep you from getting moved back in the pocket 3 or 4 yards. There just isn't, I don't think.
That's a good point.
So undrafted free agents, the Vikings signed a bunch of them. There was a wide receiver that was going to sign with the Vikings, but he ended up going to the Raiders. So at the end of the day, they only had 89 players on the roster. They could have 90. They solved that problem by signing fullback Jake Vargas, who has no chance to unseat the Vikings' #1 deep threat fullback CJ Ham. But either way, I'm not going to go down player by player on this undrafted free agent list, because none of them are going to make the roster probably.
No.
But are there any undrafted free agents that the Vikings signed that you like, Chris?
I don't have the whole list right in front of me. I can't remember all the names. I know there was a lot of hot takes on the social media after the free agent signings, because we apparently signed someone named Luigi. So all the Mario Kart jokes came out en masse, and references to Ziggy Wolf looking like one of the Mario villains. But other than that, I can't recall any of the undrafted free agents off the top of my head. But I think any undrafted free agent is going to have a bit of an uphill climb to make this roster anyway. So I mean, stranger things have happened, but we'll have to see how things go during off-season workouts and training camp and whatnot.
I'll read them off real quick. Safety Mike Brown from Miami of Ohio. Thomas Hennigan, wide receiver from Appalachian State. Bryant Koback, running back from Toledo. Zach McLeod, linebacker from Miami. Josh Sokol, center from Sacred Heart. Tyrese Stevenson, defensive tackle from Tulsa. Trey Turner, wide receiver from Virginia Tech. Luigi Villain, linebacker from Wake Forest. He should make the 53-man roster just on the name alone.
Luigi Villain.
And then Ryan Wright, punter from Tulane. Drew, are there any of those guys that you think have a legit shot to make this roster? Or
one guy, and I want to give a shout out to Ryan Johnson over at Vikings Uncensored. When we were on their show, he pointed this guy out to me and said, "Drew, go watch the tape." I went and watched the tape, and I am high on this dude. It's that Bryant Koback, running back from Toledo. That dude is going to make a serious run at making the roster. He might be our next Rex Burkhead, or what was that other guy's name? Danny Woodshed or Danny Woodcutter. What was his name?
Danny Woodhead?
Danny Woodcutter. Yeah. This guy is 1,400 yards rushing last year, 15 touchdowns with a 6.7 yard average. And he caught 30 passes and another 3 touchdowns. In his career at Toledo, he had 4,000 plus rushing yards, 47 scrimmage yards, 4,700 scrimmage yards, and 52 touchdowns in his career at Toledo. 745 touches, 4,700 yards, and 52 touchdowns. And that guy is every bit of anything you want from a running back. So there's one guy I got to pick off this list I'm going to keep track of. It's Bryant Koback from Toledo.
I was going to look at him and either Mike Brown or that wide receiver from Appalachian State, Thomas Hennigan. Hennigan looked pretty good. But again, guys that play at schools like Toledo and App State put up good numbers. You always, with guys like that, you always have to question the level of competition. Now, I love Tuesday and Wednesday night action on ESPN as much as anybody.
Oh,
I do.
Ted, Kareem Hunt played at Toledo now.
He did. Yeah. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger was a Miami of Ohio product. There's some good players that come out of the MAC. So I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm rooting for all these guys. I truly am. But there are reasons that they are long shots to make a 53-man roster.
It's a long shot, but I'm going to be interested to see if he gets some playing time in the preseason, because this guy runs with a lot of grit and a lot of heart, and unlike Zimmer's not there, so he's actually going to get a chance to carry the ball. So
that's a great point I wanted to bring up earlier when Chris was talking. With all these young guys, and these undrafted free agents, and there have been guys in the past, and the one name that pops into my head is fullback Kerry Blasingame from a few years ago.
Yeah,
he had a hell of a preseason.
Yes,
and he played better in the preseason than CJ Ham did. And I love CJ Ham. Don't get me wrong, but do you think that guys that really go above and beyond to kind of make a roster spot are going to be rewarded with performing with this new staff or not? Or do you think it might be some of the same old, Chris?
I don't think we're going to see the same old with this staff. I mean, Mike Zimmer is one of those guys. I mean, for the last couple of years, priority number one for Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer was saving their jobs, basically.
True. Yeah.
And as far as Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell, they know they can go 0-17 this year and probably not get fired. So this is the first step in them building the roster the way they want it done, and they're going to give a lot of these young guys every opportunity to prove themselves. And we talked about the way the Zimmer era ended. If you look at some of the guys we drafted last year, they didn't play. So this is essentially the first year for them too. You look at guys like Chaz Surratt, dude didn't play. Wyatt Davis, dude didn't play. Patrick Jones, he played a little bit, not a heck of a lot, but this is proving time for them as well. So
yeah,
I think they're going to get a lot of opportunities under this new regime that they probably wouldn't have gotten under the Mike Zimmer regime.
Agree or disagree there, Drewster?
I totally, Chris. I'm glad we have a smart guy like Chris on this show, because he makes me think. He makes me use my brain, Ted.
In my head.
Now that I think that's good knowledge on Blasingame. By the way, What the hell more was Blasingame supposed to do in that preseason to get a job? He
Yes.
was like the freaking second coming of Mark Van Egan. I mean, he was all he was running touchdowns, he's running for first downs, and he gets no thank you. He gets nothing. And now I think he's still on Tennessee. I think he's still in the league. So yeah, that's a good point, Ted. No, I agree with everything Chris just said. I think it's a new start. Guys are going to get a fair shot. None of this, my guy's going to play, but your guys suck. Well, he's going to play anyway. No, that's out the door.
That's what one thing I really hope to see with O'Connell and how he approaches this roster is that rookies that got drafted that he might not have been 100% on board with, but because of this collaboration and consensus was cool with his second choice, not his first choice, won't automatically be put in a Siberian dog pound and never see the field because I'm butthurt that I didn't get to pick all the guys that we picked. I had to sit down and not deal with it. Yeah, whatever. Shut up.
Yeah.
God, I just so done with that mentality.
That is so well. Good job, Smitty. That's totally true, man. I am sick of that gloom. I hope that gloom is gonzoed.
And with the talent, and Chris brought it up, the players that we never saw last year, and we were all pretty excited about when the Vikings drafted them, kind of like how we feel now about players. So there's going to be a whole lot more competition on the Vikings defense than we saw last year, I think, because these rookies are going to be given a chance. I would like to think last year's draft class that never really got a chance will be given, if nothing else, a fair shake and an opportunity.
Sure.
And may the best player win out. And that's, I think, as a Vikings fan, that's all you can ask for at this point.
I mean, Blasingame must have kicked over a couple chairs on his way out the door. Man, screw this place.
I would have been pissed, man.
He had a great preseason.
So we're getting ready to wrap up. And Drew, before you said we go, you said you wanted to talk something about a grade 8.
It's the Drew grade 8. And we talked about it about a year ago on Vikings Report. I can't remember episode 20 or 30.
I had no idea.
And I brought it up. It's something I learned from Chuck Noll's book when I read Chuck Noll's book when I was, everybody else was reading Dr. Seuss. I was reading football books when I was a kid. And it's the grade 8. It's 4 positions on each side of the football that you have to be great at. And if you are great at it, you're going to be playing for Super Bowls.
Okay.
And those positions are quarterback, running back, left tackle, unless you have a lefty quarterback, then it would be right tackle, and wide receiver. Those are the 4 positions on the offensive side you have to have stud action at. You have to have great players at. Defense, You have to have a middle linebacker who's top 5. You have to have a hell of a defensive end, somebody to rush the passer. You got to have 1 pass rush specialist. You have to have 1 shutdown corner, and you have to have 1 playmaking safety. That is your grade 8. And that's what I've always had in my head, grade 8. When I look at teams who make the playoff or teams that make the Super Bowl, I always go back and I look at their depth chart. Who do they have on the grade 8? Now, we may not be at the grade 8 right now when you look at those 8 positions I just mentioned. And I want to say the 14 other players that make up the rest of the starting 22, they're not chopped liver. I'm just talking about they have to be good too. But I'm talking about those 8 guys. You have to have those 8. You have to have a grade 8. And I don't know how close the Vikings are. Maybe in the future episodes we could break them down. Maybe you guys could tell me now how close we are. I mean, it wouldn't take long to go over the 8 positions, but
let's do it. Let's start a quarterback. Is Kirk Cousins great, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drew,
Yeah,
you're talking great. You got to talk like Terry Bradshaw type thing. It's got to be A. It's got to be an A grade player.
Yeah, he is.
Drew?
No.
I'm going to say no.
Well, then why'd you ask?
Running back, Dalvin Cook. Drew?
A.
Chris?
Yeah, if he stays healthy, yeah, we'll go. Yeah.
I'm going yes as well. Left tackle, Christian Darrisaw.
Yes.
You're saying yes. I'm going to say, can I say maybe?
A solid maybe. Yes.
Can I go? The potential
solid maybe with the arrow pointing up. The green arrow.
Maybe with the arrow pointing up. I just think because he started late last year with the injury, got a slow start. By the end of the year, I thought he was playing well. And with a full off season to rehab and get healthy, I'm really excited to see what he can do for a full 17 game schedule. And if he can stay, if he's healthy, I think the answer is yes, but I want to see him healthy.
I want to retract my answer to maybe too. That makes a lot more sense than just saying yes.
Yeah. He's not there. He's not there yet, but he's on his way there.
Wide receiver is a yes for me.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
So we're 2 out of 4 unanimously on yeses on that, right?
Yes, we are unanimous on running back, unanimous on wide receiver,
Okay.
potentially unanimous on left tackle.
So we're close, but like I said with the Vikings, we're not quite there. And the rule is if you got 5 out of 8 on the grade 8 scale, you're bubbling for the playoffs every year, but you're not in the Super Bowl. You got to go 8 for 8. Chuck Noll said 8 for 8. Now let's do defense.
All right, middle linebacker. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say Eric Kendricks, and I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
Yep, he's there.
Chris, defensive end.
Yeah, I think so.
Drew?
Oh, absolutely. Pass rush specialist with Hunter.
Yeah. Drew, shut down cornerback.
I had yes before the show, but now after all the logic you just talked about with Darisaw, I got to say maybe. I no. At this point, no, we don't.
Who's your maybe?
Booth, but that's a big.
Okay.
I mean, no. I was going to answer it with a flat out no. We don't have a shutdown corner.
Okay. Chris?
No, we don't. I mean, Patrick Peterson is still solid, but he's trending down, and we haven't seen Andrew Booth actually take the field yet, so I can't give this one a yes.
I'm a no. I'm a solid no right now.
Yeah.
Safety. I'm going to say yes with Harrison Smith, and right behind him, I think Seen is going to be the next Harrison Smith.
Oh yeah, for Stuart Scott.
Yep. I will agree with Ted on that one, I think.
Drew?
Yes.
So, gentlemen, we've got 3 unanimous yeses on defense and middle linebacker, defensive end, and safety. We are all unanimous no on shutdown cornerback. So we've got 5 unanimous yeses.
Okay.
In middle linebacker, defensive end, safety, wide receiver, and running back. Left tackle's a maybe, trending upwards. So we're not there yet. So that's 6. So the only 2 positions are quarterback. And I think Kirk Cousins is good. And then shut down corner. I think that's a no.
Well, see, this is the whole process of the Drew 8 exercise is to see where we're at. And if you wrote it down perfectly. You just said everything perfectly. I think we're right there, but we're not there.
Let me ask you this then. So,
right?
I agree. Let me ask you this then. Let me roll this forward a little bit. So you've got because everybody says for Kirk Cousins to shine like Matthew Stafford did last year with Los Angeles, because there's been a lot of comparisons made between what Stafford did when he went from the Lions to the Rams, and now Kevin O'Connell coming from the Rams, and what he can do that to Kirk Cousins. When you have what looks to be a pretty good football team around Kirk Cousins, does he have the potential to become a yes? Drew?
I really want to say yes. I just, when it's overtime and you're at midfield and he throws that pass to Thielen, and then he follows that up with the touchdown pass to win the game to Rudy, that's the Kirk Cousins we got to see more of. I don't know how else to put it. It's too fleeting. He can't do it twice every 5 years. If he could turn into that guy and have some aggression, he will be a yes. But right now, it's hard for me to vote for that because I haven't seen it.
Chris?
I think he's definitely. I mean, I answered yes in the first place. So this is going to be the first time. This is going to be the first time in Kirk Cousins' time with the Minnesota Vikings where he has a coach that doesn't actively hate him, which can only be helpful in this case. I think Kevin O'Connell is going to do a lot of good work with Kirk Cousins, and I think the defense, or I think the offense is going to be a little more adaptive to what the actual strengths of the offense are. So I definitely think the potential is there.
Okay. So that's not bad. That's not bad.
So we're right there with the great 8. If you use the great 8, we're right on the cusp. Right now we're a playoff team, but if we can increase in the few areas that Ted just said, then we can get to that 8 for 8. You're playing for Super Bowls, people, and that's what we want to do.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
What was the most with the draft over? What position group was the most improved, Drew?
Corner.
Chris.
I agree. It's definitely the cornerback room.
Yeah, that was an obvious choice with me. And I would just say the secondary overall. I mean, because they addressed in free agency and the draft, the Vikings addressed starters, they addressed depth, and I'm not going to go out on a limb and say it's a position of strength yet, but the Vikings have some players in the secondary where they were sorely lacking before free agency started and before the draft started. So I'm really looking forward to see what the new Vikings defensive coordinator Ed Donatel can do with these guys, because I'm starting to get kind of fired up. I was really kind of not as free agency was going on, but then I sort of looked at what they were doing and some players they got. I think they addressed a lot of their depth issues in free agency. I think they've addressed some of their talent discrepancy, the talent gap in the draft. And if these guys can get coached up, man, this could be a fun unit to watch.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun. So,
Absolutely.
all right, we're going to wrap this up now. Real quick, a couple of notes. There is no studio show this week. There is no studio show next week because next Thursday, the NFL releases their schedule, and we know the Vikings are going to play in England next year against the Saints. So we're going to do another live show next Thursday to discuss the full NFL schedule release. So there will be no studio shows for the next 2 weeks, but it'll be me, Chris, and Drew and Ruby next Thursday. And then I think we're going back to our regularly scheduled programming after that.
Yes.
So, Chris, you got any last thoughts before we wrap this bad boy up for tonight?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I think the Vikings did about as solid a job as you could hope for in Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's first draft. Like I said earlier on, there was the initial stumble, but I think they recovered quite nicely for the rest of the selection meeting. And the Vikings are a better football team today than they were a week ago. And when you're finished with the draft, that's just about all you can hope for, I think.
Drew.
I want to address ESAT Nation for everybody thinking, it's over with. It's over with. Listen, defensively, they're bringing in a bunch of new players. Let's not forget they're bringing in a new style. Zimmer's was predictable. His defense was predictable and stale and old. Donatel, it's going to be disguised. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be exciting to watch. It's completely different. You got to be excited about that. And on the offensive side of the football, the Vikings averaged 362 yards a game. That was good for 11th in the league. 11th in the league with a head coach who didn't know squat about offense and a coordinator who didn't belong there. 11th. Now you move in a guy who knows everything about offense, who was a quarterback his whole life, and a great offensive coordinator with Wes Phillips. If they're 11th with Zimmer, what are they going to be with these guys? So both sides of the ball. I love all the newbies that are coming in. We got 28 new players with the draft, free agents, undrafted free agents. We've got 28 new guys. Now is the beginning of constructing it all and see what we got on the Vikings. You have to be excited, ESAT. You have to get excited about the new direction of this team, Ted. And I know I used more time than I'm supposed to.
No, that's fine. You did great, man. Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. It's a new era. There's a new approach. There's a new sheriff in town, whatever the phrases you want to use. Right. The Vikings are going to look remarkably different than they have the last couple of years. And I think that's a good thing. And I'm looking forward to this new team when they take the field for their mini caps. Those are coming up. And then we slowly but surely press on towards training camp in July. So Chris, Drew, thanks for joining. Ruby, thank you for everything you did. To get this show together and get us all talking and moving and shooting and navigating and aviating in the same direction and all that stuff.
In the midst of all that, I forgot to thank our viewers for showing up. Thank you for coming on, being around in the chat room. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Again, another live show next Thursday, tentatively scheduled for 7 p.m. Central Time, like we did tonight. If any of that changes, we'll let you know. We'll keep reminding you throughout the week. For Chris, for Drew, for Ruby, Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching.